Good morning to one and all. Today's topic for discussion is drugs for constipation. This is addressed under the competency PH 1.34, which deals with describing the mechanism of action, types, doses, side effects, indications, and contraindications of drugs used in constipation. The learning objective for the session are we'll be defining the terms laxatives or aperient, purgatives or cathartic. We'll be classifying laxatives or purgatives, describing the different mechanisms by which the laxatives act, and the major chunk of the class will be dealing with description of the mechanism of action, dose, adverse effects or disadvantages, indications and contraindications of different classes of laxatives or purgatives. So, all of you know that constipation is a very common disorder, and most of the constipation is of the functional type. That is, there is no pathology associated with the GI tract, but the person may be constipated due to inadequate dietary fiber because of reduced intake of water, decreased exercise, or more often because of irregular bowel habits. There are other types of constipations also, which can be associated with some pathology, like the atonic or the spastic constipation, and the constipation associated with the irritable bowel syndrome. And there can be reasons to use the laxatives other than constipation, that is, to evacuate the bowel before a surgery, or to evacuate the bowel in cases of drug or food poisoning. So all these things will be dealing under the uses of different laxatives. So first we'll define the terms. The laxatives are the drugs which promote the evacuation of bowels. So why are we using all these four terms? So the terms are based on the intensity of action. So laxatives or aperients, they are having milder action and they eliminate soft but formed stools. Purgatives or cathartics, on the other hand, they have stronger action and they result in more kind of fluidy and forceful evacuation. So it is only a difference in the intensity of action, and there is no clear cut distinction between the terms, because most of the drugs at lower doses they can have a mild action and can be laxatives, and at a higher dose the same ones become have a stronger action and can thus be called as purgative. So there is no clear cut distinction between the terms, and most often the terms are used interchangeably. Now let us see the overall mechanism of action of laxatives. So laxatives can be acting by different mechanisms. So we are first dealing with the general mechanisms, and as we come across different classes, we will be seeing their individual mechanism of action. So all the laxatives, they increase the water content of the feces. Now, how do they increase the water content of the feces? One of the actions is by an osmotic action, which will lead to the retaining of water and electrolytes in the intestinal lumen. So this laxative can be having an osmotic action which draws the water into the lumen. This will increase the volume of the colonic content. So as the volume of the colonic content increases, there can be easy propelling of the colonic content, because as the content is more, there is more pressure on the intestinal wall, and the propelling of the colonic contents is increased. They can decrease the absorption of water and electrolytes into the intestinal mucosal cells, or they can increase the secretion from the intestinal mucosal cells into the lumen. This is a second mechanism by which they can cause an increase in the water content of the colonic contents. That is, by decreasing the absorption of water and electrolytes into the intestinal mucosal cells, or by increasing the secretion from the cells into the lumen. Now, there are different mechanisms which are affected at different levels on the intestinal mucosal cell to bring about the decreased absorption or the increased secretion. So, we shall look at those mechanisms. So it can inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase of the intestinal mucosal cells, and this will impair the absorption of water and electrolytes into the intestinal mucosal cells. So inhibition of sodium potassium ATPase. Some of the laxatives can cause structural injury to the intestinal mucosal cells, which can again impair the absorption of water and electrolytes into them. Some laxatives increase the prostaglandin synthesis and some can increase the nitric oxide synthesis. And both of this will increase the secretion of water and electrolytes from the intestinal mucosal cells into the lumen. So there are two mechanisms which are impairing the absorption of water and electrolytes into the intestinal mucosal cells, and there are two mechanisms that is involving the increased synthesis of prostaglandin and nitric oxide, which are increasing the secretion of water and electrolytes into the lumen. So we have seen two major mechanisms by which the laxatives act. The third mechanism is that some of the laxatives can increase the propulsive activity by acting on the myelinic plexus. So what happens is, as the propulsive activity of the gut is increased, there is less time for absorption of water and electrolytes into the intestinal mucosal cells. So this will indirectly increase the colonic content of water and further increase the propulsive action. So first, the laxatives will directly act in the myelinic plexus and increase the propulsive action, which will reduce the water absorption. Again, the colonic content increases, the propulsive activity increases. So it's like a circle that goes on. Now we'll look at the next important thing, that is the classification of laxatives. This you have to learn by heart. So you will classify into different classes and you have to learn the examples belonging to different classes of laxatives. The first one is the bulk forming agents. This includes dietary fiber, or mainly the bran, psyllium plantago, isfagula, and methyl cellulose. Then you have got a class called as stool softeners. This includes docussates or DOSS and liquid paraffin. Next one is stimulant purgators. Under this, you have got some subclasses, diphenyl methanes. Under that, you have got bisacodyl sodium picosulfate. Anthraquinones or imodins, you have got Senna, Cascara, Sagrada. 5-HT4 agonist, prucalopride, and prostaglandin analog, lubiprostone. Then you have got osmotic purgatives. Under that, you have got non-absorbable salts, which are called as the saline purgatives. And this includes mainly the salts of magnesium and sodium, like magnesium sulfate, magnesium hydroxide, sodium phosphate, sodium sulfate, sodium potassium tartarate. Then you have got the non-absorbable sugars, which are lactulose and lactylol. So the classes are bulk forming agents, stool softeners, stimulant purgatives, osmotic purgatives. So you have to learn all these classes with the corresponding examples. First, we'll take up the bulk purgatives. So these include indigestible vegetable fiber and hydrophilic colloids that increase the stool volume and lower the viscosity of intestinal contents, forming a large, soft, solid stool. So they are called as bulk because they form a large stool, but the stool is often soft and solid. It is not watery or fluidy. They are mainly indigestible vegetable fiber and hydrophilic colloids. So they are basically having some amount of osmotic action, which will increase the stool volume. The first one is dietary fiber, or mainly the bran. So the dietary fiber consists of unabsorbable parts of vegetable food like the cell wall, cellulose, lignins, gums, pectins, and all. So bran is specifically the residual product of the flour industry, which consists of 40% dietary fiber. So the bran is actually containing only 40% of the dietary fiber. So how does this dietary fiber act? It is absorbing water in the intestinal lumen, swells and increases the water content of the feces, so softens it and facilitates the colonic transit. Now, how it is absorbing the water in the intestinal lumen? Because there are osmotically active products are formed from this by bacterial degradation, which act to retain water. So, though these are separately classified from the osmotic purgatives, but these are also absorbing water into the intestinal lumen. How? By formation of osmotically active products. So more of this dietary fiber is also having the osmotic based action. That is the first mechanism of action which we had described. So the uses of dietary fiber includes the prevention of functional constipation. So note the word prevention. So before the functional constipation can set in, if you start including the dietary fiber in the diet, it can prevent the functional constipation. So it is not used for treating, it is to prevent the functional constipation and also to avoid the straining at stools. So in patients who are having hemorrhoids or patients who are having fissures or hernia or patients with myocardial infarction, they are not supposed to strain at stools. So we can include a good amount of dietary fiber in the diet to avoid them from straining at stools. They'll be having soft firm stools, and this will prevent the straining because it will cause easy evacuation of the bowel. So they do not have to strain at the stools. Now, additional use of dietary fiber other than constipation, or you can call it as an additional advantage, is that these dietary fibers, they bind to the bile acids and promotes its excretion. That is, they promote the excretion of bile acids. Now, bile acids, they play in a role in the cholesterol metabolism. So when the bile acids are excreted in the stool, it leads to degradation of cholesterol in the liver. That is, the cholesterol is degraded to form bile acid. So whenever there is a decreased bile acid in the body, because it is now excreted into the stool, what happens is there is a degradation of the cholesterol in the liver to form more bile acids. When there is a cholesterol degradation in the liver, more of the LDL is the low density lipoprotein, the bad cholesterol, plasma LDL is taken up into the liver, and this leads to the lowering of the plasma LDL. So when you are going to learn about drugs for hypercholesterolemia, this fact will become simpler for you. At this point, you only have to remember that they have an additional benefit in lowering the plasma LDL levels. The dose of bran is 20 to 40 grams per day, which is quite high. The disadvantages of dietary fibers are, and they are unusually unpalatable because they have to be taken in large quantities. The effect occurs only after taking the full dose for 3 to 4 days, and they can result in flatulence also. The contraindications, that is, they should not be used in patients who are having gut ulcerations, adhesions, or stenosis. Should not be giving them in patients who are suspected to have fecal impaction. So these contraindications should be kept in mind whenever you are prescribing the dietary fiber. The next one, the next type of bulk forming laxatives are psyllium, plantago, and isfagula. They contain the natural colloidal mucilage, and they again absorb water and they form a gelatinous mass. They are fermented in colon, increases the bacterial mass and softens the feces. So they again, what happens is they absorb the water, just like the dietary fiber, they absorb the water. But these also get fermented by the bacteria in the colon. So they increase in the volume and increase the bulk of the feces. They are also used for prevention of functional constipation, avoiding of straining at stools, just like the dietary fiber. They also find use in constipation predominant irritable bowel syndrome. Okay, so you have to remember that psyllium and isvagula, they find use in constipation, predominant irritable bowel syndrome. We didn't see this use under dietary fiber, but this is there under isvagula. They can also be used for chronic diverticulosis. The dose Hisvagula has 3 to 8 gram is mixed in cold milk, water, or fruit juices and taken once or twice a day. It should not be taken dry as it can cause esophageal impaction. So this is the way you are giving the psyllium as well as the Isvagula. The third kind of bulk forming laxative is the methyl cellulose. It's semi-synthetic derivative of cellulose, and the use is the same as dietary fiber to prevent the functional constipation and to avoid the straining at stools. The dose is usually 4 to 6 gram per day. So we have finished the discussion on bulk forming laxatives, which includes the dietary fiber, then psyllium and isvagula, and third one is methyl cellulose. Most of them are used for prevention of functional constipation and avoiding of straining at stool. Isvagula finds two additional uses, that is use in constipation, predominant irritable bowel syndrome, and also in chronic diverticulosis. Next, we move on to stool softeners. So this includes docosahexanes, first one, or DOSS, dioctyl sodium sulfosuccinate. If you don't remember the DOS, just mention docosahexanes as examples of stool softeners. As the word suggests that they will be softening the stool. In the previous one, we saw bulk laxatives. So they were increasing the volume of the stool. This one is softening the stool. So these are all anionic detergents. So as any detergent does, it emulsifies the colonic contents and increases the penetration of water into the feces and softens it. So it is not basically, the first step is not to increase the volume. It is actually emulsifying the colonic contents and allowing more water penetration into the feces, thus softening the feces. It is usually a mild laxative and it is often given when we have to avoid the straining at stools. The dose is 100 to 400 milligram per day and acts again in 1 to 3 days. So both bulk forming as well as stool softness, you can see it takes some time to act, 1 to 3 days. The disadvantages usually or the adverse effects are cramps and abdominal pain. Bitter taste of the stool softeners can cause nausea in some individuals, and on prolonged use, they can lead to hepatotoxicity. The next tool softener is liquid paraffin. It is a pharmaceutically inert, viscous liquid containing a mixture of petroleum hydrocarbons. So, as the name suggests, it's a liquid containing petroleum hydrocarbons. It is also softening the stool by retaining water in the lumen. It has to be given at a dose of 15 to 30 ml per day. And again, the effect will be seen only in 2 to 3 days of use. So far we have seen all the laxatives which have to be used for at least 2 to 3 days to bring out the first effect. Now the liquid paraffin, though being a stool softener, it has got very unpleasant disadvantages, because of which the use is very much restricted. So we'll see what are the disadvantages of liquid paraffin, because of which it is not very popular nowadays. So disadvantages include it is unpleasant to swallow because of its oily consistency. It is unpleasant to swallow. Then small amounts of the liquid paraffin can pass from the intestine into the lymph, and it can cause foreign body granulomas in the intestinal submucosa, mesenteric lymph nodes, liver, and spleen. So there's a chance of formation of foreign body granulomas in different parts of the body. It can sometimes trickle into the lungs while swallowing and can lead to lipid pneumonia. It can carry away the fat-soluble vitamins with it into the stools and can lead to vitamin deficiency on chronic use. It can sometimes leak past the anal sphincter, which can be very embarrassing, and it can sometimes interfere with the healing in anorectal region. So these are some of the unpleasant disadvantages of liquid paraffin, because of which it is not very popular. So we have discussed the stool softener, that is docosahexanes, and liquid paraffin, more of a mild, both of them are mild laxatives, which are used only to prevent the straining at stools. Their effect again begins in 1 to 3 days of use. And among both of them, again, liquid paraffin has become less popular because of its multiple disadvantages. Next, we go on to the stimulant purgators. Under this, we have got a lot of subclasses also. So we'll just look into each one briefly. So stimulant purgators are very powerful purgators, and if they're given in large doses, they can cause fluid and electrolyte imbalance. Now, these are the class of drugs which can cause fluidy stools, and so a lot of water is lost, and it can seriously cause fluid and electrolyte imbalance, mainly hypokalemia. The mechanism of action of all the stimulant purgators is, first, they increase the gut motility by acting on the myenteric plexus, and they can cause the accumulation of water and electrolytes in the gut lumen by either altering the absorbing or the secretory activity of the mucosal cells, which we learned in the first one. So there is not much of an osmotic action. It is mainly the second and the third action that we have mentioned under the general mechanisms. Second and the third one is mainly active in this case. So the first ones are the diphenyl methanes, under which we have got two, that is the bisacodyl, and then you have got sodium picosulfate. So first we shall look at bisacodyl. It is a very safe and popular laxative, and it is often available in the very popular brand called as Dulcolax, that is bisacodyl. So the mechanism of action, it is converted into an active metabolite in the intestine, and it is stimulating the GI motility, as well as it is increasing the intestinal secretion. So general mechanisms which we have mentioned under the stimulant purgative, the same thing you can repeat here itself. The dose by the oral route, it is 5 to 10 milligram given at bedtime. So one or two semi-formed motions will occur after 6 to 8 hours. So you can see it is relatively faster in action. If you're giving it by a suppository, then it has to be given only in the morning, because defecation can occur in 15 to 20, 40 minutes with the use of a suppository. So this bisacodyl is relatively faster acting as compared to the bulk forming and the stool softeners, because even if it is given by oral at bedtime, by morning there is an evacuation, and suppository given can cause an evacuation in 15 to 40 minutes. The disadvantages include mild local inflammation on prolonged use, that is proctitis, and sometimes it can cause anal soreness, especially if suppositories are used, it can cause anal soreness. Then sodium picosulfate, the mechanism of action is similar to bisacodyl. It is mainly used for evacuation of colon before colonoscopic and colonic surgery. So again, this bisacodyl also finds its use in evacuation of the bowel before surgery, and it can also be used for all kinds of constipation. But the sodium picosulfate is mainly used for evacuation of colon before colonoscopy and colonic surgery. It can be given by as orally, 5 to 10 milligram orally at bedtime. Evacuation occurs after 6 to 12 hours. So it is having the same dose as that of bisacodyl, and almost the evacuation time is also similar. The next class of stimulant purgatives include anthraquinones or imodins, and these are usually plant products used in household medicine. It includes two examples, Senna and Cascara sagrada. Senna is obtained from the leaves and pods of Cassia species, and Cascara sagrada is obtained from the leaves of the buckthorn tree. So these are the two examples of anthraquinones, and the mechanism of action is similar. That is the same mechanism which we have mentioned under the stimulant purgatives. The dose is usually around 12 to 18 milligram orally at bedtime. Again, the evacuation occurs around 6 to 8 hours. So you have seen that you're seeing that stimulant purgatives are all acting in the range of 6 to 8 hours after their administration. The disadvantages include skin rashes, fixed drug eruptions, and the prolonged use for months can lead to colonic atony and melanosis. So this is one of the characteristic findings which is seen with anthraquinones like Senna and Cascara, that is melanosis of the gut. So colonic atony and melanosis of the gut occurs with anthraquinones on prolonged use. The next one is 5-HT4 agonist, which is also a stimulant purgative. And under this, you have the example of prucalopride. It activates the prejunctional 5-HT4 receptors on the enteric neurons to enhance the release of acetylcholine, thus increasing the gut motility. This drug is now approved only for use in chronic constipation, which is not responding to the other drugs. So this drug is not used as a first-line drug for constipation. It is given to patients who are not responding or not getting the adequate benefit after using the other drugs that we have mentioned so far. It is given 2 milligram once daily. The disadvantages include headache, dizziness, fatigue, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. Then you have got the prostaglandin analog. Example is lubiprostone. It stimulates the opening of the chloride channels. It's a chloride channel opener in the small intestine, and it leads to the secretion of fluid rich in chloride. And again, it is also used in chronic constipation and constipation predominant irritable bowel syndrome, not responding to the other drugs. So you can see we had also mentioned about Isvagulla being used for constipation predominant irritable bowel syndrome. That is the first one. But if it is not responding to the other drugs, then this drug, that is lubiprostone, can be tried. It has a dose of 24 micrograms. That is very small dose, twice daily, and has to be given along with the meals. The disadvantages are it can cause nausea and headache in some patients, and it's obviously it is expensive. Being a prostaglandin, it is having a higher cost. So with that, we finish the stimulant purgatives. We have mentioned mainly the bisacodyl. Then we mentioned about the sodium picosulfate. Then we mentioned about the anthraquinones or imodins, which includes Senna and Cascara, 5-HT4 agonists like prucalopride, and prostaglandin analog like lubiprostone. Then we come to the osmotic purgatives. It's a large class of purgatives. These are solutes that are not absorbed in the intestine, and they retain water because of their osmotic action. They produce soft liquid stools in 1 to 3 hours. So you can see this is the shortest acting one. The onset of action is least 1 to 3 hours, still shorter than the stimulant purgatives. Under this, we have got the first one, that is non-absorbable salt saline purgatives. Includes magnesium hydroxide, magnesium sulfate, sodium sulfate, and phosphate, etc. However, these saline purgatives, that is the non-absorbable salts, because of their unpleasant taste and because they cause a watery stools, these are not preferred much. They find use only for evacuating the bowel before surgery, for food and drug poisoning, where you want a very immediate action. And they are also used as after purge in the treatment of tapeworm infestation. So what is this after purge? That is when there is a infestation, that is an there is a helminthic infestation of the gut. So ant-helminthic drugs are given to destroy or to kill these helminths. And after the helminths are killed, they have to be evacuated out of the bowel. For evacuation of these helminths from the bowel, you can give a drug, laxative. And one of the laxatives is given is a saline purge. So what we usually say is we give a saline purge after a dose of ant-helminthic drug. So one of these drugs, that is magnesium hydroxide, magnesium sulfate, sodium sulfate, etc., can be given as a saline purge after giving an ant-helminthic drug. The other osmotic purgatives are non-absorbable sugars, and this includes the lactulose. So lactulose is a semi-synthetic disaccharide of fructose and lactose, which is neither digested nor absorbed in the small intestine. It gets fermented to osmotically active products in the gut. Again, this is used for the same use as the other osmotic purgatives, that is preparation of bowel before surgery, food or drug poisoning, as well as after purge in the treatment of tapeworm infestation. They can be given at a dose of 10 to 30 gram along with water. It produces soft to firm stools in 8 to 24 hours. So as compared to the saline purgatives, this is taking a little more time. Disadvantages: flatulence, cramps, and nausea. Very important thing that you have to remember is the use of lactulose in hepatic coma. So other than constipation or for evacuation of the bowel, lactulose is often used for patients with hepatic coma. Hepatic coma, otherwise called as hepatic encephalopathy. And there is a high buildup of ammonia in such patients, and that is the reason why they end up in a hepatic coma. So how is this lactulose helpful? So lactulose is broken down by the gut bacteria to weakly acidic products, which lower the pH of the stools. Now, when the pH of the stools decreases, it is unfavorable for ammonia producing bacteria. That's the first thing. That is, the production of ammonia is decreased because this lactulose is broken down into weakly acidic products, which lowers the pH of the stools. And at this pH, the ammonia producing bacteria cannot survive. So the production of ammonia is decreased. Second thing, the already formed ammonia, it gets converted to ammonium ions under the acidic pH, and the ammonium ions being impermeable across the cell membranes, it is not absorbed into the blood. So already you know that the ions do not cross across the cell membrane, the ammonium ions will not be able to be absorbed into the blood. So these are the two methods by which the lactulose decreases the ammonia levels in a patient with hepatic coma. So dose of lactulose in hepatic coma is a little bit higher than that being used for constipation. So you can see it is used only 10 to 30 gram per day, once only for constipation. But for hepatic coma, you have to give 20 grams thrice a day. The next one is lactitol, which is also a disaccharide sugar alcohol, which is similar in action and uses to lactulose. However, its palatability and patient acceptability is much better than lactulose, and hence it is used as an alternative to lactulose for the treatment of constipation as well as hepatic coma. So whenever you are asked to name two laxatives which are used for hepatic coma, you can say lactulose as well as lactitol. Both have the same reason why they are used in hepatic coma. So now just a comparison of the type of stools and the latency of action of laxatives. So the soft form stools of, within 1 to 3 days, you have the bulk forming laxatives, stool softeners, and even lactulose. Then that is because lactulose, I mentioned, the action can begin anytime after 24 hours also. Then semi-fluid stools within 6 to 8 hours, you can have the more of the stimulant purgatives like bisacodyl and senna. And the least one, that is the shortest, or the onset of action, is seen in the saline purgatives, that is 1 to 3 hours. So the uses also will vary. As you will see in the next slide, the uses also will vary. Suppose you want to have an emergency evacuation, as in the case of food or drug poisoning, or you have to prepare the bowel before the surgery, you might be preferring a saline purgative. Whereas when you have a functional constipation or to prevent the constipation, you may be going for a bulk forming ones, stool softeners, lactulose and all. And then the somewhere intermediately you can use the bisacodyl and senna. First, functional constipation. Patients with functional constipation, the choice is to give dietary fiber, adequate fluid intake, exercise, and regular bowel habits. In elderly patients, you can give dietary fiber and increase the fluid intake. Pregnant women with constipation, dietary fiber would be preferable. Others are not advisable for the damage that can be done to the fetus. Then, to avoid straining at stools in case of patients with hernia, hemorrhoids, MI, etc., bulk laxatives, stool softeners, and even lactulose can be given. Constipation, predominant irritable bowel syndrome, can give bulk laxatives, that is Isfagula. not the dietary fiber. Isvagula has to be given. In the case of food or drug poisoning, you have to give osmotic purgatives, that is mainly the saline purgatives. Bowel preparation before the surgery or colonoscopy can give either bisacodyl senna, which are stimulant purgatives, or osmotic purgatives, especially the saline purgative. And after purging the treatment of tapeworm infestation, you can give osmotic purgative, mainly a saline purgative, and even senna. So we have mainly described the classification, and we have mentioned the pharmacology of each class of laxative. And finally, we concluded with the choice of purgatives under different scenarios. So this session, you have to learn this, many aspects have to be learned by heart, and repeated reading is advisable for this topic. So thank you all.